Hi there, welcome to Theta Wyckoff Technical Analysis session. If you're new to my sessions, here are the 3 key takeaways you can expect. So let's start with the weekly chart, and this is the very first session for Theta. I've only put in the key levels, so it's time to put in the Wyckoff tags to their right location. So currently we are at the accumulation cycle. So let's park these temporarily over here. Okay, if that was a distribution back in 2024, beginning of it and also the end of it, much like the other altcoins, this is where all those distribution tags should go to. Okay, I'll put this over here. Automatic reaction. And now it's time to zoom in. I know it's difficult if you're watching on a mobile if I continue at that scale. So now we have them parked at the approximate positions. It's time to move them to more exact points. Alright, we've got all this. And let's copy this across to the buying climax over there in March 2024. PSY period, February. Automatic reaction. This one was deep, but this one was shallow. Okay, and then last point of supply. This one does not even have a sign of weakness. That we can still say that potentially that was, but it was really short-lived. So I'm not going to complicate things too much, but just put one here instead of multiple. Okay, and then eventually it came down for a quick higher level accumulation compared to what we have right now and what happened back in 2023. So let's copy these tags over here. I've got a backup last spot support for about a week, and let's put the selling climax first. That goes to there. Automatic rally right there. So there was second test that went deeper, but not as deep as the spring back in late October or beginning of November last year. Alright, that may qualify as a sign of strength. It got close enough to the green, while we had one already during mid-July, but then it eventually died down to the spring now. Okay, so the next thing we hope to see, or eventually may happen, according to Wyckoff terminology or methodology, is for the price to come back from the spring towards the sign of strength and eventually a backup or last point of support period. Not that it can, like, sometimes it can last a longer time for a few candlesticks, but sometimes it's just one quick last point of support and then it bounces up to the new distribution. Alright, and let's do it right over here as well, because that's the period I mentioned that lasted for quite a number of candlesticks. Sign of strength, selling climax, automatic rally, second test, subsequent tests, and eventually there was a spring as well. Okay, so that's the bigger picture since 2022. We have gone through 2.5 because we're still going through the third one. So essentially it's 3 accumulation and 2 distribution during these 3 years. Let's go to the daily chart. While we're seeing this spring continue to seek a lower level where there are some support around the 33-34 cents That's from the early days of Theta, since 2018 all the way into 2020. If that's where Theta is going to. Not that it's not impossible, because what happened on October 10th has indicated that the price can get to that level. You see if I draw a very rough line over there. Okay, so that's where these bunch of candlesticks found support. If I enlarge this, okay, this is where the support was. And fast forward to October 10th, you see where it landed. Okay, so that's, that tells us a little bit of a story. Daily chart. Again, we've got all the text scattered. It's time to put them in. It's very tricky to trying to put Wyckoff into a daily chart, because that's not what Wyckoff method is designed for. It's designed for bigger time frame, but in early days when I first started, a community member asked, hey, can we try that on a lower level time frame? So yeah, let's have fun and see what's going to happen. Okay, let's do this. There was a buying climax right there. PSY. LPSYs, multiple. Second test. You can actually call that an up thrust too. So the buying climax was on the left. This is on the right, and we've got an automatic reaction right after the buying climax, and another LPSY. That was the sign of weakness, and multiple over here. And eventually we got to go through a period of preliminary support into the selling climax. So this is where it gets tricky. In the weekly chart, it's very clear, what stages those can be. But when we get to a daily chart, the chart looks so busy, and is not an easy thing to visualize what had happened. Second test, sign of strength, and other subsequent tests. And this hasn't happened yet. It looks like this was, but it wasn't. This is duplicated. What's happening right now is we're seeing a potential spring that's happening. Okay, so that's a lower point in accumulation. Much like, again, this is the tricky part. It dropped so low, and then it took a pause and then come back down. So one way to do this is, this was the selling climax, and there was the automatic rally. Just to make it simple, it was crazy during that period. And subsequently there was second test that went deeper, more tests, and then eventually the spring. Okay, and the sign of strength, multiple rounds. That's where eventually it went up. So this can go to here first. I'm not going to tag these. It's basically just very similar things. It's going to make the chart very busy, but that's what's happening. Here, what we're going to expect is, or what's potentially going to happen is, for the price to come back to a sign of strength, just to be careful, because the volume, the buying yesterday looks pretty strong. These 2-day drop looks pretty low in terms of volume compared to what happened on Monday and Tuesday. So that's a good sign. Actually on Tuesday, there was quite a bit of buying from the bottom. Not saying it's at the actual bottom, it may still come down. Assuming that's the bottom. Okay? So the volume is telling us it seems to be stabilizing at this point. However, if I draw box, not a line, to look at this downtrend, assuming that's what we're going through with Theta. Okay, we are still pretty much at the lower half of the downtrend. Let's shrink this a little. Okay, if I draw a center line across where the most frequently cut across, the most candlestick I can cut across with this line, that's where the center line goes to. Not that it's halfway, like cutting the box into 50%. The more important is it cuts through most of the candlesticks. So currently we're still at the lower half of it. If it doesn't break towards the upside and goes above this downtrend, that's where it still have a chance to get to challenge lower levels, like this yellow dashed line at around 20 cents, or this solid line, white line over there at around 19 cents. Is it 19 cents? No. Let me check. This is 20, but this comes down to 1 cent actually, 2 cents. Somewhere between 1 to 2 cents. That's a very pessimistic view, not that it hasn't happened in the past, but we definitely don't want to see Theta going back to the 2019-2020 level. So hopefully, even if this trend continues, this time point is pointing to, assuming it continues to trade within the channel, there's a triangle right there. Here, near the end of March next year, there is a breakout opportunity. Okay, hopefully it breaks out sooner. Having said that, while we're talking about this, let's see whether we have more levels before this yellow dashed line. Right there, we see some group reference. So let me enlarge this and try to find the support we can take reference. So one is clearly at this level, the other is at this level. So these two are the ones, that's perfect, that was a peak over there, are the ones that's going to guard the price of Theta today. Alright, it's very far from history. Alright, we're getting there. That's where we are. So we've drawn two more lines, and interestingly, you see I wasn't looking at this side, and by drawing these lines from the left, this was exactly what's happening in the past few days. Alright, we got to this lower yellow dash line at around 40 cents, and then bounces off from there just to get rejected from this higher line at around 50 cents. And I wasn't even looking at the right hand side when I pull these two lines together. And they should be flat instead of, like, this is likely going up. So let's do 495. Likewise for this one. Not 5495, 495. So now it's flat. This one, let's put them both to 40 cents. Okay, so this is what's happening right now. While it's still trading along this downward channel, here and here there are two breakout time points. One is February, much earlier than the March we talked about. This one, beginning of January. Assuming the price or the theta continues to trade within this blue box, maybe it found solid support from this dot line. Okay, so it's going to travel here. If it travels to this point and finds support on this, then January or near the end of this year would be the biggest opportunity for it to break outside of this downward channel. However, if it continues to trade here instead, then we may have to wait till February or the end of January for that to happen. Alright, those are two scenarios if Theta doesn't break this channel box sooner. So what can cause it to go up? It's two things. One, is there any big thing coming out from Theta in the near term? Okay, or is there anything for the crypto industry in total that's going to happen really big? Like, I don't know, money printing by big countries that may be a booster across the board. And looking at what happened just today, even though we are somewhere around this support or resistance line, this long wick from the bottom looks like there are quite a bit of support or buying from that point. So hopefully it stays above this yellow dash line and eventually jumps up here, because if that happens, that's the third triangle where it only points to mid-December. So that's the earlier breakout opportunity if it successfully climbs to that point to break outside of this downward channel, of course. Alright, so that's for Theta, very first session of it. So hopefully it helps clarify some of the things that's been going on. It's pretty interesting to analyze all these, and hopefully the industry continues to grow as well as these individual projects, because as much as regulations becomes more friendly, it means it's opening the playing field for more competitors. So whether it's something good for the incumbents or not, that's